This is the hottest Porsche of the moment, the 911R, named after a special homologation 911, of which just 20 were built a half-century ago. It's the lightest 911, filled with crazy tech and carbon fiber and the insane 500 horsepower engine from the GT3 RS. Yet it has no launch control. And what's this, a clutch pedal and stick shift? Surely that means it'll be slower than the GT3 RS.
Exactly how much slower is the 911R? Well, I've come all the way to a German airfield to find out, and I've brought some very expensive equipment too. However, before we actually talk about how much slower this car is, I need to tell you just how important this piece of information is. The 911R is nothing new. Like I said, it uses the 500 horsepower 4-liter from the GT3 RS and the medium width 911 body with the magnesium roof and carbon fiber hood. But unlike any other 911, it hasn't been tweaked to do really well on standardized tests like 0 to 60 or fuel economy. Doing well on a standardized test is meaningless. It's like that idiot friend of yours who's as dumb as a box of rocks, but managed to get an A in chemistry by memorizing enough useless facts, you want to kill him.
And yet, big companies love standardized tests. Why? The easiest way for middle management paper pushers at Porsche who know nothing about cars to prove their worth is by telling engineers to make the cars go faster from 0 to 100 and boasting about reduced consumption that none of us really care about.
Oh, their heads must have exploded when the world lost its collective mind over the Cayman GT4. It would have been faster and more efficient if it had a dual clutch automatic, and yet it's sold out completely with a stick shift. Oh dear, looks like we've come to a fork in the road. Oh, which way do we go? If we go that way, it's all about lap times in 0 to 60. If we go that way, it's about the experience. What do we do?
Porsche has done both. The GT3 and the RS care about lap times in 0 to 60. If you do, great, but that is not what this 911R is about.
And even at $186,000 base, they're all sold out even before the first one was built. Maybe it is all about the experience. Maybe that's why the old 911s are so expensive that none of us can afford them. And again, this does remind me of an old 911 with all this noise and houndstooth seats that are sexy as all hell. Oh, the German hills are alive with the sound of insane Stuttgart!
The 911R is four-wheeled rolling descent that modern cars can't be loud, communicative, or involving. You hear every pebble, you feel every bump, and with so much engine music coming constantly from behind your head, you won't ever catch yourself going fast by accident.
Boom, limiter, third. Oh, God, the noises this thing makes. Woo! Damn it, I hit the limiter again. Okay, I have one huge complaint about this car. This engine revs to 8,800 RPM. We know this from the GT3 RS. Unfortunately, the big diameter clutch disc that the manual transmission needs can't deal with the centrifugal forces of that engine speed, so they had to limit it to 8,500. Oh yeah, cry me a river. But the tachometer doesn't go red until 8,600, which means you never hit redline, and that's infuriating. So much so that I beg all of you who have ordered this car to please cancel your order immediately and tell Porsche to give the build slot to me. This transmission's a 6-speed. The other 911s use a 7-speed, and that top gear is, let's be honest, there for fuel economy. Fuel economy is another standardized test that the 911R didn't bother studying for, and rightfully so. But the 6-speed is amazing. It's got really widely spaced gates, so there's never any confusion about what gear you're going into. The shifter feels amazing. It's really heavy, very positive engagement. Of course, I say this all the time, if it's one thing that Porsche does better than any other car company in the world, it's calibrating between the clutch, the shifter, and the gas pedal. Every one of the shifts in this car is just easy. It's almost as if the clutch is somehow engineered to make engagement smooth all the time. There is an auto blip function, which you can turn on and off, but it's mislabeled on the button. It says sport, but I fixed that with a little piece of tape. You don't need it. Trust me, you don't need it. And if you do need it, well, you shouldn't be driving a 911. Having a lot of power is a really good thing. Having a lot of power without a lot of weight is an even better thing, and that's the 911R's calling card. At just 3,021 pounds, this is the lightest 911 of them all, says Porsche. And they've accomplished that with a couple tricks. First of all, rear window, plexiglass. Rear side windows, also plexiglass. Unfortunately, we don't get that in the US because it's not legal for some stupid reason, but we do get the magnesium roof. And of course the carbon ceramic brakes and the carbon fiber hood, which doesn't even have a badge, a sticker, which is lighter. And even though that seems a little bit cheesy, it recalls race cars, and that makes it automatically cool. You can actually see all of the carbon fiber, but what you don't see is sound deadening. And that means you hear everything that's going on inside of this car. It's really difficult to faithfully reproduce all of the sounds you hear inside of a car, but that's so important to the 911R experience. So we're gonna try our hardest to reproduce that. Okay, so we're in the car, the engine is not running, but I'm gonna turn the key on. It'll do its dings. But I want you to hear something. As I move the gas pedal up and down, you actually hear the servo motor moving the throttle in the engine behind us. That's how little sound deadening this car has. When I start it, well, listen. Okay, you're hearing a lot of stuff. You hear those ticks? That's actually the injectors and the injector pump rattling. And when I blip the throttle, you're actually going to hear the when the throttle cracks open. Insane. Okay, this car also has the optional lightened flywheel, which isn't heavy enough to damp the crankshaft's vibrations at idle. So when I let my foot off the clutch, transmission's going to spin up, but you're going to hear all the gear lash. Ready? Insane. Insane. I've never heard a modern car make all these great noises. That one, not exactly pleasant, but it's honest. That's why I love this car. I have a runway, and now I'm going to use it. 4,000 RPM, clutch dump, here we go. You're just driving down the road in this car. Let me see, 6th gear. You can probably hear a bunch of pebbles hitting the underside of the car. And then anything over like $2,000, you hear the engine, like actual mechanical engine noise. Not on the gas, just cruising. You never get this in a 911. You don't get this in any modern engine at all. And when I crack the throttle, all that intake noise, you hear the throttle crack open. It's not a tube, the engine, it's right there. You hear it right there. And just cruising along, this thing feels special. It feels different. It feels like an old 911. It feels like an old car, but old cars can't drive like this. You might criticize the 911R for being just a compilation of parts that we know from other cars. But the fact is, you don't get to play with this engine in the GT3 RS or the GT3, really. You don't understand just how light that flywheel is and how easy it is to drive this car and how much fun it is to row through the gears. That is all lost on that car. Yeah, otherwise it drives just like a GT3 with really quick turn-in. And that makes it even more fun to drive. This is not a car I want to lap. I don't feel like I need to get out on a racetrack to have a good time. Just a straight runway, that's all I need. When I first heard about the 911R, I thought immediately, this is my kind of car. And I set the bar really high. I thought, wow, I'm gonna love this car. And that usually means a lot of disappointment. I get there and the car's not as good as I hoped. Not the case here. The lucky people who are getting this car are getting what is unquestionably the best 911 of this generation. It combines all the great stuff from the old 911s with this motor and this tranny and this body and these brakes.
Please don't mistake all of my love for the 911R as any sort of insult towards those other motorsports department 911s, the GT3 and the RS. The GT3 in particular is so good that it almost defies its 911-ness. It'll drift all day, never bite you, or scare you, and still manages to thrill you at every turn. Drive a 911R and you'll never look at the GT3 the same way again. This car, sold in such tiny numbers that you'll probably never even see one, is a tacit admission by Porsche that chasing numbers and lap times isn't the only goal for the 911. And it's proof that when you strip out the sound deadening and take away all the gadgets, the inherent awesomeness of those ever more expensive old 911s has been hiding in the 991 all along.